If 20% of the population already believe that we have been visited by non-human intelligence, how much more does it have to be for the population to actually be ready for that revelation?
That have said that these extraterrestrials are actually demons from hell and sent by Satan. If someone like that was in charge of the UAP program, they're saying, well, if there's we've got to kill these people, we've got to kill these beings because they're demons. We've got to send them back to hell.
Is putting scientific credibility and fringe adjacent speculation in the same room. I think that's a good thing. Bringing scientists into the topic and destigmatizing it as well. We need to stop talking about extraterrestrials and refer to non-human intelligence because we don't know where they come from or when, or extra-dimensional is a possibility. Terrestrial but from under the sea is a possibility. Lunar beings, would they count as extraterrestrial? Welcome back, viewers and listeners, to Aliens Explored, your weekly UFO podcast. And today we are looking at a news roundup of all the interesting... we're only talking about interesting things there. I was questioning myself for a moment.
Let's leave out the uninteresting things.
All the interesting things that happened during June last month, so June 2026, if you're watching this in the far distant future. I am one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm your other host, Neil Kelly.
Right, let's dive straight into this because there's quite a few items this week.
There are a few, aren't there?
First up, I think the big news headline for June, we had the third tranche of Pursue files. That's the Pentagon UFO files. That was released on the 12th of June 2026. So this is the ongoing Pursue transparency process. The release that we got reportedly included more than 50 files, including accounts of glowing orbs over the US, a 2008 Zimbabwe airport case, and a Colorado Springs angular potato sighting. The important caveat here is that the documents were described as unresolved, not proof of aliens or non-human technology, but the best military minds have looked at these and said, we don't know what it is. So there we go. We did do a video about it. I will put a link up on the screen for you to have a look at that if you want to go into a deep dive into them. But there we go. What did you make of the files being released, Neil?
Well, of course, of military minds, there's only two options as to what you can say at this stage. You can either say, well, we don't know what it is, which is straight up, or you can say, well, based on my belief system, I think it's this. Those are your two options, really. That we don't know. As you say, it's not nothing, but it's also not proof. Transparency, but not necessarily disclosure.
And that's a really good way of putting it. So the question is really, is what we are getting actually meaningful evidence, or just a big pile of ambiguous reports without enough data behind them?
Are they just swamping us? I mean, I know it's a common tactic in legal situations where someone asks for disclosure of information, and you give them a sort of 10 truckloads of boxes of files, which they've got to try and get through over a weekend.
There's that. There's also, they can just say, here's all the files we can find, and they've got another box out the back.
Yeah.
It's like, when you get dodgy businesses, they will keep two sets of accounts.
Yes.
The accounts that the taxman gets and the accounts that are the real ones. And, is that what we're getting here? Is the taxman's version of the accounts? Time will tell.
Time will tell. That feeds neatly into the second item on the agenda, which says the June file release has reignited the show us the raw data problem. So, as we've just been saying, a recurring criticism of the June files is that they lacked the context, raw sensor data analysis, and chain of evidence needed to move the cases beyond interesting but unresolved status. Former, are we going to say Arrow, AARO director?
Arrow, yeah. Arrow is the common.
That's what they call it. Yeah. Sean Kirkpatrick. And sceptical commentators argued that releasing ambiguous material without analysis could just fuel speculation rather than clarify anything.
Yeah, and it's worth bearing in mind that at least in this person's my personal opinion, Sean Kirkpatrick is a lying POS. He's been caught lying so many times now.
But you can't really argue with that criticism that if you are just releasing ambiguous material, then it's just fuels speculation. Lights in the sky, the orbs. Well, what is it? We don't know what it is. Well, people are going to say, "Oh, that's a spaceship." Nothing we've made on this planet can move like that.
Many whistleblowers, have come forward and said that exact thing. Of course, eyewitnesses like Ryan Graves, Admiral Gallaudet, Tim Gallaudet. But of course, when they are releasing, I do understand. It is difficult. They have to redact certain things for national security reasons. That might be where the location is. Oh, absolutely. What technology they have, how far away can they surveil from? That's all national security level stuff. And if that's in the data that's being redacted, I get it. It's frustrating.
Or in the case we spoke of relating to a submarine, in the previous the call sign redacted. We're not even allowed to know what submarine that was, let alone where it was or what it was doing. But being a military military asset, they just have to assume that anything they see that can't explain is potentially a threat.
There is that, and yes, it's a big possibility that using that excuse of it's for national security reasons, that's why we can't give you that piece of information. They might well be doing that to hide things. But again, time will tell.
So, if we're talking about potential disclosure, when one day they just open the hangar doors and say, "Look, we've got it all," would that necessarily involve giving away military secrets, things that certain people in the military are going to regard as highly classified? I don't think America is obsessively secretive as Britain is, where we're still not allowed to know certain things that happened during the First World War or previously. Yeah, they'll stick 100-year or longer. Well, they'll stick 100-year notice on it and then renew it 100 years later. Yeah, no, we still don't think the public should know that.
I was watching a recent interview that News Nation did with Representative Burleson. And he was saying that when they're trying to get these files out of, organizations like the FBI or the CIA or the military or whoever, or private, individuals as well, private companies, he was saying, we'll say, can we have any files relating to this thing? And they'll come back and say, no, we don't have any. And then they'll say, well, what about file number XYZ, dated this date, titled this? And they'll come back and say, oh, yeah, we've got that. And here's that file.
Yeah.
So, if you just say, send me, all your files about non-human intelligence, they'll just say, oh, we don't have any. But they have. They just, you need to ask for them very specifically by name. And that is a big challenge.
I guess that's how the Freedom of Information Act works as well. You've got to know what they've got in order to demand to see it. I mean, I remember the intelligence community were horrified when the Americans introduced the Freedom of Information Act. that members of Joe Public could ask the government for classified or at least confidential documents. I mean, we've since introduced an act of our own, but there are definite exclusions from it. You are not allowed to. They will not respond to anything about the intelligence or security services or special forces like the SAS or the royal family.
Yeah,
not allowed to know.
How dare these public servants be held accountable?
Yes.
Anyway, moving on. So, our third section, again, this is sticking with the Pursue files. There are claims, and it has to be said, at the moment these are only claims, there's no evidence behind it, but there are claims that the new files that have just been released point to Russian and Chinese cache retrieval interests. So some disclosure advocates have interpreted parts of the newly released material as suggesting that Russia and China may have retrieved or attempted to reverse engineer UAP-related technology. Now, we have to be very, very careful with this because it is only a claim and it's only interpretation at the moment being made around the files. It's not a verified conclusion that's been established by the documents. It's what people think that is in there. But, these are smart people at the end of the day. While a certain amount of assumption is being made, I think we're having to make assumptions with these files. What do you think?
Where you've got military rivalry, yes, if there's any suggestion that your opposite number might have access to some new kind of technology which goes way beyond anything you've got, that's going to be of interest. So I can imagine that there are people in America who are just as worried about the Russians and Chinese reverse engineering crashed UFO technology as the Russians and Chinese are potentially worried about the Americans doing it. And they always have to, whenever there's a possibility that someone's developed some kind of technology, they have to explore it themselves. So I remember a case where it was rumoured that the CIA were using psychics and mediums that they could pry into your secrets using someone's special remote writing or automatic writing or whatever. They can write down what you've written down. And so if you think the enemy's doing that, you might think, well, this is nonsense, but you've also got to think, but what if it isn't? What if it is actually real? We've got to explore it. Of course, though, what we've seen in recent months, what we've seen just this year, is the most high-tech, advanced militaries in the world, as far as we're aware, the US and Israel, which is supplied with American equipment, defeated by being overwhelmed by cheap weapons. A 20 grand drone, or in Lebanon, a $5,000 drone or whatever, or a $500 drone. That's it. And that's where the economics of war comes in. If you've got a 20 grand drone coming your way, do you really want to shoot it down with a $3 million anti-missile missile, or even a 400 grand Sidewinder missile from a plane? They've got 10 drones for every Sidewinder missile you've got. Just cost for dollar.
Bear in mind that £3 million missile or $3 million missile actually only cost $500,000 to make. The other $2.5 million went into reverse engineering UAPs.
Yes, into slush funds or whatever. And of course, they've got to fire several of them. There will be they'll try and intercept at long range, medium range, and then short range. You've got to because these things were created during the Cold War. They weren't designed to shoot down a mass of missiles coming your way. They were aimed at shooting down a nuke coming your way. So you want to make sure you want to be able to have several goes at it, because the cost of not intercepting it will far outweigh the cost of anything you might spend on your interceptors. But yeah, you can't use them against what's effectively a long range artillery barrage. Just
to go back briefly for one moment on something you said a little earlier in that, for our OCD listeners and viewers, when you said about automatic writing, I think you meant remote viewing.
Is it remote viewing? I've heard it called automatic writing as well, where someone can sort of sit down with a blindfold on and a pencil in their hand, and they can pick up a telepathic signal or something, and they can copy a document that's in a safe on the other side of the world. I've always seen that as part of remote viewing. To me, automatic writing is the spiritualist, writing a letter from the dearly departed. There's that as well, but I think it is that they don't even know what they're writing. They're just blindfolded, and the pencil's just going over the page. And at the end of it, there you go. There's
Well, I mean, remote viewing still happens, and it's public knowledge that these are things that are still happening today, organised by the military. It's not even a secret anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very, very well covered in John Ronson's book, The Men Who Stare at Goats, and the
very good film.
And the film was made of it as well. Yes.
Yeah. Right, moving on.
Okay. Oh, is that my favourite? David Grusch has made further claims about hidden spending and oversight. So in early June, David Grusch was reported as alleging that billions in secret spending may be hidden from Congress and could be connected to covert UAP-related programs. The important neutral framing is that these remain claims from a whistleblower figure. The Pentagon has continued to deny verified crash retrieval or extraterrestrial technology programs. Well, I certainly accept what David Grusch is saying, that every year the Pentagon has billions of dollars that they just can't account for. We don't know where those are gone. I think they probably have sloppy bookkeeping. I'm sure there's all sorts of corruption in the arms industry or open-ended spending. I think the key word in this is could be connected to covert UAP related programs, or they could be connected to basically funding things that they don't want to admit, anything they don't want to admit to.
It's an amount of logic in there, but I think the biggest there are so many moving parts to the whole ufology thing, but with this particular one, I think one of the biggest aspects, and it's a good point to drive down, is it's not so much about the non-human intelligences, it's not so much about the UFOs, the UAPs, it's about these are public servants misappropriating funds. And that's a big deal. That is a big deal. I mean, the Pentagon denying that it has crash retrieval programs is the biggest load of bullshit. Of course they have crash retrieval. If a plane crashes, a military plane crashes, or a military helicopter or something like that, they have teams that go out and clear up.
Yes, of course. Whether it's one of their own or, one of their concerns is certainly with their high tech fighters. What was it? The Israelis was it they dropped some kind of high-tech bomb or fired a missile into Lebanon, and it was a dud. It didn't go off. So there was this big problem. We need to get that back. We don't want that technology to fall into the hands of Hezbollah, and via Hezbollah to the Iranians, and possibly via the Iranians into the Chinese. It's a serious problem. Anything that crashes, they're gonna retrieve it. You don't just leave it lying around.
Of course they are. Of course they are. So the concept that they don't have a crash retrieval program, of course they do. Of course they do.
Whether they're actually retrieving extraterrestrial craft is...
Well, here's where I think they're utilising the language for their own benefit. They will say, we have no known extraterrestrial craft. Yeah, okay. You don't know where it's coming from. That's the point. So it's not known extraterrestrial. It might be known non-human. That doesn't automatically make it extraterrestrial. Just non-human. So I do wonder if they're using the terminology to their advantage there.
Maybe, and you know they're obsessed with having better technology. I mean, we saw the result of that in the first Gulf War, where a clearly technically superior force wiped out Saddam Hussein's forces in Kuwait. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, America was arguably had the best technology in Vietnam. Certainly the Nazis had the better technology in the Second World War. They were the side with the ballistic missiles, drones, jet aircraft, all sorts of things like that. But better small armors, better equipment. But they lost. They were overwhelmed by someone just having more technology and cheaper. I remember when a Russian pilot defected to Japan. He was a fighter bomber pilot, and he had their new, I think it was called the Foxbat? It was a new MiG, and he decided to defect, and he landed in Japan. And military analysts looked at it, and they thought this is a joke, or it's a hoax. This thing is really kind of primitive. It's made of steel, which, okay, that's better than wood, as someone said, but it's actually not what you want to make an aircraft out of. And it's all sort of cable controls and valves instead of transistors and microchips. Really, really primitive. And it took them a while to work out that actually this is an aircraft designed for the nuclear battlefield. If there was an electromagnetic pulse, when all their modern high-tech planes dropped out of the sky, this thing would keep going.
Right.
So, it's the low-tech solutions. And that's the problem with developing a very, very high-tech solution. Someone like the Star Wars program, like the anti-missile program, which was part of it. It was said right at the time, this is going to cost an absolute fortune, and you can guarantee the other side will find a cheap workaround. They'll find a way to get past it, i.e. overwhelm it with cheap drones. Yeah. Right. Moving on with other things that happened in June 2026. On the 12th of June, very exciting day, we had Disclosure Day. Not the event, but the movie. Steven Spielberg's movie opened. And to be fair, I think it's had relatively good reviews. There'll always be a lot of, naysayers, I think. But it in this movie, just in case you're not aware of it, it dramatises the idea of a government reveal just at a time when real-world UAP transparency and disclosure debates are already in the news. And it's... I think it's fair to say, though, it was a very dramatised event because real disclosure is very unlikely to look the way it did in the movie. It's going to be more slow, scientific verification. So I saw the movie. I actually did a review about it on the Planet Sci-Fi podcast. I will either put a link, or I might actually get that section of their podcast and put it on the channel for people to watch.
Did you see the movie yourself?
Yes,
Neil?
I did. I went and saw it on my silver screen ticket, which they allow they allow us old folks into matinee viewings. A cheap ticket and a free cup of tea and a biscuit. Yeah, it's an enjoyable romp. I enjoyed it, and then afterwards you start thinking, no, that doesn't really. Yes, look, I guess like any Hollywood blockbuster movie, it's like a theme park ride. You buy your ticket, take the ride. Don't think about it too much afterwards. I think the thing that really, I mean, it's basically a chase movie, isn't it? They've got this information they've downloaded, and they've got to get to the TV station to broadcast it, and of course the bad guys are after them, trying to stop them doing it. And
let's keep this spoiler free, by the way. That level is fine, but yeah.
Okay. And I think they needed to have that as that objective to keep the film going for 2 hours. I did wonder how long it took to make that film, because it came out at a very prescient time. Did Spielberg knock it out in a few weeks, or had he been? Was it just coincidence that he'd been working on this thing since last year sometime? And
well, I think disclosure as a concept has been growing for a number of years now, and we've been getting closer and closer to it. You'll remember. During the pandemic, when Trump's in his first term signed the relief fund and said, "Yeah, we'll give all this money for finding a vaccine and that, but you need to release the UFO files." And that was in that bill. Do you remember?
I remember, yeah.
So disclosure has been a thing for a number of years now, but I think. I mean, I think personally the Spielberg movie, yes, it's a lot of fun. No, it doesn't really look like what real disclosure would look like, but it does put terms like disclosure firmly in the general public. It's really easy for us to forget. Those of us who are enthusiastic about the UFO topic. We forget that most people aren't familiar with the sort of terminology that we use on a day-to-day basis, like disclosure. So it puts terms like that. It puts certain concepts, like screen memory. I don't think they actually use that term in the movie, but that's the thing that's talked about quite a lot in ufology, particularly in abduction cases. And, it puts that sort of concept in the public's mind. So I think it does move the needle, that movie, really, really well.
I think Spielberg's done more than most to generate interest in extraterrestrials. I mean, most people only know the term extraterrestrial from his film E.T.
E.T.
Yeah,
or Close Encounters, of course. They only know the classification system through that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, prior to the release of E.T., we didn't really have anything going on with Halloween in this country. they might show a late night horror film or something like that, but carving pumpkins, making jack-o'-lanterns, all that kind of thing, trick or treating. That wasn't a thing in this country until people saw it in that film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He definitely he's good at shaping the zeitgeist.
Yeah,
is Spielberg, and I think Disclosure Day, definitely goes a long way towards doing that as well. Preparing us all for actual disclosure. So
actual disclosure when they open the hangar and say, "Here it all is." Yeah, we're gonna come clean.
There we go. What we got next?
Number 6. Public polling showed high suspicion of government secrecy. So a CBS News / YouGov poll reported in June found that a large majority of Americans believed the government knew more than it was saying about extraterrestrial life. So that's a large 63% believe there is life on other planets, and more than 1 in 5 believe that aliens have already visited Earth. So it's a majority believe there's life on other planets, and a minority believe some of it's actually made its way here. Which
we say a minority, 1 in 5, 20% thereabouts
is a minority.
Yeah. It is a minority, but it's also, that's a good big chunk of the population. And get, I'm very big at saying, you compare that to 20 years ago. We were just saying about the zeitgeist changing. I think that's a good example of it, where the public mood is changing and it's shifting massively. If 20% of the population already believe that we have been visited by non-human intelligence, how much more does it have to be for the population to actually be ready for that revelation? And it's not many more, I would say.
I would like to know what their survey group was, how widely it was conducted, whether it was just in Europe or the United States or wherever.
Well, it specifies people in America, so
okay, specifies people. So
it's going to be.
So, what proportion of Americans believe the Earth is flat? What proportion of Americans believe that evolution is just made up stuff, and that it's actually the Bible is the truth? So
that'd be interesting to compare those statistics. I do,
and where there's an overlap.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that YouGov have a tendency that they tend to be very reliable and a trustworthy source. CBS News, sometimes.
Yeah.
But there we go. Okay, so next up, the Trump administration has commissioned a UAP Governance Board. This is going to be led by Avi Loeb in an advisory role, and it's emerged in June. So reports in late June, so this is fairly recently, have said that the Trump administration had created a UAP Governance Board, and that Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, who we've talked about many times here on the podcast, would lead or advise its scientific advisory side. I think we actually, since writing this, we've established it. He is definitely leading it, because he is the one commissioning various people on that board. Avi Loeb himself is a high-profile but quite controversial figure because of his willingness to discuss possible alien technology, although he reportedly says he is approaching UAPs first as a national security and a data problem, not as an assumption of extraterrestrial origin. And again, I get kind of hung up on this. I think we need to stop talking about extraterrestrials and refer to non-human intelligence, because we don't know where they come from or when, or, extra-dimensional is a possibility. Terrestrial, but from, under the sea is a possibility. Lunar beings, would they count as extraterrestrial? But there we go.
No, I think anything. Yeah, I think I'm from under the sea would count as extraterrestrial. I mean, it's not on land, is it?
It's too narrow a term. I'm absolutely certain of that. But with Avi Loeb at its head, this UAP Governance Board is putting scientific credibility and fringe adjacent speculation in the same room. Now, I think that's a good thing. Bringing scientists in into the topic and destigmatizing it as well, which has also been a big factor during June. Moving the zeitgeist and destigmatizing, I think, have been the key points. What are your thoughts on this governance board?
I suppose he's got to approach it first as a national security and data problem. We need to know that all our instruments work properly, and then when we see these things that we can't explain, we know it's not a problem with our equipment. Yes, it's a national security problem because these things could easily be of terrestrial origin, just superior technology. But it says it puts scientific credibility and fringe adjacent speculation in the same room. Aren't they usually in the same room in terms of people on the fringe not taking science seriously or not understanding science?
No, it's more that scientists historically have tended to steer well clear of anything fringe adjacent, like the UFO subject, simply because of the utter ridicule and stigma associated.
Yeah, I mean, I know there are plenty of scientists. I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I know there are some issues with him, but he did say, that how many billions of galaxies are there, and how many billions of star systems are there within those galaxies? And we know that the most basic building blocks of life, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, are the most common elements in the universe. And we know that life started forming on this planet as soon as it cooled down enough. It didn't waste any time getting going. So we've got to expect that, there's life out there somewhere. I think most people would accept that in the vastness of the universe, there's probably life somewhere else. There are living beings, but what form that would take?
63% of Americans, according to that poll.
I don't know if it's a spoiler, but they did touch on the religious implications of extraterrestrial life in Steven Spielberg's film Disclosure. That a nun was asked, if you do find that there are these superior beings from another planet, doesn't that completely undermine God? Your Bible, which says that mankind is God's greatest creation. She says, no, not at all, because it clearly says in the Bible, mankind is God's greatest creation on earth.
Yeah, so I thought that was a beautiful moment and a fantastic way of addressing the religious issue around UAP.
I haven't checked that the Bible actually says that.
I haven't either. I did take it on faith.
And I don't know if religious people will accept that argument. No, you got to keep it within the right parameters.
Some will, some won't. I'm constantly having to moderate the comment section for people who are, let's just say, full of religious fervour, talking about demons and the end times are coming, and I do tend to remove those from the comment section.
But that is something that's had quite a high profile amongst certain Republican politicians in the state, probably Democrats as well, that have said that these extraterrestrials are actually demons from hell and sent by Satan. Yeah. Which assumes that if someone like that was in charge of the UAP program, they're saying, well, if there's we've got to kill these people, we've got to kill these beings because they're demons. We've got to send them back to hell.
It's a bit worrying. It is a bit worrying.
But should expect it, really. But in this day, people do still believe in that kind of thing.
They do. And it's all just words at the end of the day. And use a word like God, and that will mean one thing to you. It'll mean something else to me, and it'll mean something different to every single person we talk to. And there we go.
There we go.
Yeah. Moving on.
Moving onwards and upwards and back to Disclosure. So the Disclosure Foundation held a Capitol Hill forum on the 25th of June. It was its inaugural Disclosure Forum in the Kennedy Caucus Room of the Russell Senate Office Building, bringing together politicians, former intelligence figures, researchers, whistleblower advocates and UAP campaigners. Vanity Fair magazine framed it as a sign that the disclosure movement has gained political legitimacy, even while it remains a mix of national security professionals, experiencers, activists, and more speculative voices. So it's as you've said, this idea of disclosure is becoming more well known and more accepted by the public at large.
Yeah. Now, I know you've been working away for a couple of days, so would I be right in thinking that you haven't had chance to catch any of that?
I haven't, no. I'm clean.
I caught some of it. I have very, very mixed feelings about this forum that was held. Very mixed feelings. On the one hand, yes, the legitimacy of it being held at Capitol Hill in the Kennedy caucus. I mean, that in itself, I've got mixed feelings about. A lot of people, a lot of disclosure advocates have been saying, "Wow, it's amazing! It's in the place where they discussed Watergate and and things like that." Yeah, but how many boring, meaningless meetings have been held in that room as well? So I don't take that as too much. But the fact that yet this forum is being held on Capitol Hill is really validating. However, I started watching this thing, and this was 7.5 hours long, so it was heavy going. But they held a faux award ceremony that made the thing look like a cheap, self-congratulatory. It's the kind of thing you'd expect more at a sci-fi convention, to be honest. It was just frankly, ridiculous. I know people want recognition for everything they do, and that's fine. There's a time and a place for it, but that wasn't it, and it cheapened the feel of the whole thing. Now, there was some really, really good and interesting things that came through from it. There was nothing new that came out that we didn't already know or that wasn't already in the public view. But at least it was another legitimate voice and place where the fact that UAPs are being discussed in Congress on Capitol Hill, and they're being discussed seriously, is incredibly validating for the whole of ufology, and I don't want to knock that at all. But I do think that the Disclosure Foundation should have treated the whole thing with a little bit more seriousness than they actually did. I mean, the award ceremony was just a real misstep.
I mean, at the risk of being a bit overtly political, I'm just going to say this. America now has a president who pretty much runs the country by executive order, and that he just bypasses all the so-called checks and balances on executive power. I mean, we were always told that the president can't take the country to war without congressional approval. Oh yes, he can. So you got Congress sat there saying, "Well, what are we going to do? We obviously don't want to upset the president by sort of weighing in on something. So let's just talk about that. Why don't we talk about UAPs? Because we're obviously not allowed to talk about all this other stuff that we previously thought was in our remit. Give us something to do." No,
I mean, I would say that's understandable, but perhaps leaning towards cynical view there.
Yeah, I put a cynical view out there.
And it is worth bearing in mind. And one of the things that that I think is important to that's coming out of like the congressional hearings and this forum, this is a bipartisan issue. So it's also bicameral as well. So that's just something that never happens. For our UK listeners, that bipartisan, as we know, means both parties. Like it's not a one side says this, and it's both parties working together. Bicameral. It's almost like the US's version of the House of Lords. House of Lords and House of Commons working together as well. So you've got these four sort of areas all working together on it, and so I think that's a real positive as well on the political side of it. So one of the things that the forum did highlight, and it's becoming more and more in the conversation, is the importance of whistleblower protection and post-disclosure planning. So at the forum, speakers discussed not just whether UAP are real, but what disclosure would mean legally, politically, psychologically, financially, and, as you touched on earlier, Neil, religiously as well. Some participants raised ideas such as whistleblower immunity, public trust, and even reconciliation-style processes if a long-term cover-up were ever to be proven. And the thought is at the moment that, there are people deep inside this who have either, they've actually murdered people themselves to keep the secret, or they've ordered the murder of people. How would you feel like, so putting your skepticism to one side, if disclosure sort of happened tomorrow and yes, we have this, we've been covering this up for years, and here are these people who've been covering it up. Yes, they've murdered people, but we're giving them immunity so they can come forward. How would that feel to you?
I don't know how that would work. Yes, people have been murdered, but it's kind of off the books and, black ops and that sort of thing. I think it's very difficult to give whistleblowers immunity. It's like if you work for a large corporation and you blow the whistle. I've worked for companies where when you first join them, they give you a load of policy documents to read. Very dry read. So there will be, this is our security policy, this is our IT policy, this is our whistleblower policy. And I read it, and it was nothing of the kind. It was, this is how to, if you think a colleague of yours is stealing stationery, this is who you should report it to. Well, that's not whistleblowing. Whistleblowing is when you think the chief exec is misusing their position for their private gain, or that your organisation is either involved in things that it's not supposed to be involved in, or isn't doing things that it is supposed to be doing. That sort of whistleblowing. It's very hard to protect whistleblowers, because you don't know what kind of retribution is going to come after them afterwards. I think you have to think, you're not going to keep your job if you blow this whistle. They're not just going to keep you, unless it's seen in the public good. You get rid of a whole tranche of executives, and they're replaced by people who actually agree that information should have come out. But I think, in the reality of protecting whistleblowers, especially if they're divulging things that are regarded as state or military secrets, I'd be very wary of what sort of protections might be in place, given the reach of the people who might want to harm you for doing so.
Well, this has happened already with people like David Grusch and Matthew Brown. Their lives, their careers have been utterly destroyed by coming forward with the information that they've come forward with. And even then, they're not coming forward with information that hasn't been cleared. It's been cleared for them to talk about, and their career is still, they've lost all their security clearances and everything. It really is a difficult one.
David Grusch should have expected that if he's a serving officer in the military, and he's going to start talking about stuff that he's seen. Even though he's saying, I can't show you this stuff, but I can tell you what's in it. Well, that can get you get you put away in prison for the rest of your life quite easily.
Well, that's why he got authorization to declare what he did first. And absolutely, yes, he knew that would be coming. You hope it won't, but yeah.
Yeah, and he should have known that he would face ridicule, because all he's saying was, well, I've definitely seen this stuff, you've got to believe me, or someone told me about this. So, really, David, is that all you got? You can't actually show us anything.
It is a little bit more than that with David Grusch, but I know you have your thoughts on him.
Yes, I do. But really, my main thought with David Grusch is, why are you doing this to yourself? What did you think would happen? when you did this?
Because he believes that the core element of the information that's being held from the public should not be held from the public.
Yeah.
That we are not alone, basically.
But it is still being held from the public. So all we've got is his voice saying, they've got this stuff.
You've got his voice and others pushing for the government to admit what it knows. Yes. Anyway, that's a whole debate, and I know that can go on for a long, long time with us. So let's move on to the next section.
Okay, back to religion and disclosure become a more visible part of the conversation. So the June Disclosure Forum reportedly included discussion of religious and psychological implications of disclosure. That matters because UFO belief does not exist in a vacuum. Some people interpret UAP through science, some through national security, some through conspiracy, and some through religion or spirituality. So from a military perspective, yes, it's definitely going to be through science and its implications for national security. Is this a terrestrial rival that we're seeing, or some other? Is this basically an air defence issue that we're looking at?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I'm pretty sure it affects people in America much more greatly than it does here, although it will have some impact here, because we're not as overtly religious in this country. But I like to think that we manage separation of church and state rather better than they, even though we've got a monarchy, which is like allegedly, put there by God.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've got we definitely don't have a separation of church and state, because the king, the monarch, is the first. I think it was the title created by Henry VIII, wasn't it? First defender of the faith and head of the Church of England, which in those days, in Tudor times, was the Catholic Church of England without the corruption of Rome. That's basically. So the Anglican Church is basically runs parallel with the, and we have our first, the House of Lords is the largest unelected legislative body outside of the People's Republic of China, and it's got bishops in it who will legislate from a very narrow perspective of one religion. We know that we are a multicultural, multi-religious society. We know we've got Jews and Muslims and all the various flavours of Christianity, but this is basically the Anglican Church has a presence in the legislature. Whereas in America, officially, they've separated church and state. The church plays no role. However, we know that an awful lot of American politicians are very, very religious and are constantly trying to erode that separation.
Yeah, I honestly feel that we have, even though, like you say, on paper we don't have separation of church and state. America does. I honestly think that we here in the UK have more separation of church and state than they do in America.
Because in Britain or in Europe generally, people are not religious in the way they are in America. We don't have mega churches. We don't have Christian. Do we have a Christian TV channel now? I mean, I know because there's been such a massive expansion of TV and radio. I think we have a Christian radio channel maybe, but it's not. We don't have these massive movements. We don't have mega churches with thousands of people attending.
Exactly. So I can see how the UAP discussion would be an issue for a lot of the religious people in America. So yeah, tackling it kind of in advance, I think, is important. And again, you mentioned Disclosure. That scene in Disclosure Day, Steven Spielberg's movie. I think that was a really good moment. That kind of answers the question for people. It gives them something to hold on to. Really ought to check if that is is an actual quote from the Bible.
Yeah, but it is a problem when you have people who believe in demons in public positions. There was a case some years ago of a child called Victoria Colombier, who was sent from somewhere in Africa, I think it was Nigeria, to live with her aunt and her aunt's boyfriend. And social services noticed that this girl was showing signs of abuse. But they saw that as evidence of demon possession, because they believed in that they saw what were obvious cigarette burns on the child. They said, "Oh no, that's a demon's fingerprints." That's where that was believed. And I remember, and it was during the Blair government years. I remember a minister saying, we need to find a way to accommodate people's belief in demons with their position as in child protection. And that was my shouting at the radio, and no, you don't. Anyone who sees cigarette burns on a child and says, "Oh, that's a demon's fingerprints," no, they shouldn't be anywhere near child protection services. Sorry to all our religious listeners, but that's just what I believe. But yeah, belief in demons, I mean, it was very much in the African community. I think there's more belief in that community in this country, but generally I think people in this country don't believe in demons. They'll enjoy a film like The Exorcist, but and they'll be frightened by it, but ultimately don't believe that it's real.
Well, maybe we are the demons after all.
Maybe we are.
Yeah. So the next one now, claim of a long-hidden 1952 Washington UFO tape. So, Representative Eric Burleson, who I mentioned earlier, had referred to in an interview to a long unheard recording connected to the famous 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incidents. This is when UFOs were seen over several nights over Washington, over the White House, even. Now, the claim is that the tape, this is an audio tape, not a videotape from 1952. Claim is that the tape involves Air Force officials and scientists discussing the sightings and may be held by MIT's Lincoln Laboratory. Now, it's not yet an analysed public document, so we need to treat this as a watch this space story rather than evidence, but it's one example of where I was talking about Representative Burleson needs to say, I want this specific document.
Okay.
And this is one of the ones that he had been tipped off. Here's the name of the document, here's what it is, here's what it contains. He's not heard it himself yet, or at the time of this recording, he hasn't heard it himself yet, but it'd be very interesting if that does go public.
Yeah, and as you point out, this 74 years ago, but at the height of the Cold War, at the height of the Reds under the bed scare in the United States, when this probably was treated as an air defence issue primarily.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, so for me, a lot of these files, historically speaking, the government, the military, the FBI, CIA have all claimed, no, didn't happen. No, nothing to see here. Nothing of any interest. It was the same with the Phoenix Lights. Oh, it's just flares. All the rest of it. It's just, they've been claiming it was nothing of interest. So if a tape comes out where it was taken seriously, we have proof, not of UFOs, but proof that the government has been lying. And I think, with all the pursued files, that is the biggest thing at the moment, the biggest takeaway. The government, the US government, have been lying about UFOs. They've been lying about their disinterest. They've been lying. We know for a fact. They said they hadn't had any active UFO program since Project Blue Book. Then we find out about ATIP, and that all comes out, and it's okay, we have been looking into all this, So time and again they're being shown to be lying about UFOs. What else are they lying about?
Well, of course, the first step in keeping something secret is to hide any trace of what you're doing. The best kind of secret message is the kind of message where no one even realises you've sent a message. Steganography, they call it, don't they? They're hiding what you're doing. I know you're up to. If someone knows you're up to something and they say, "Okay, well, I need to start looking." Well, that's the first step in breaking, isn't it? Breaking the secrecy. So yes, the government lies, or government officials lie for whatever reasons. I mean, I'm sure lots of people have their own reasons for lying about things. Personal reasons, political reasons, money reasons. Yes, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the lying around UAPs and the US government is actually how much money we've put aside into this that we can't.
Yeah.
How many billions of pounds we can't account for every year.
Well, exactly, and while the generally understood principle, we don't have firm evidence of this as yet, but the generally understood principle is that in order to give itself proper deniability, the US government gave the retrieved UFO craft to companies like Lockheed Martin. Well, if that turns out to be true, that could be said to be manipulating the stock of that company.
Absolutely, yeah. Certainly in the armaments industry or defence, there's a very big, very risky crossover between public and private sector.
Exactly.
We know, for instance, whenever they interview a general on television, whether it's an American general or a British general, that they're going to say, we need to spend more on defence. It's practically in their job description that they have to say that. Generals will always say that. General Westmoreland in Vietnam, even though he claimed all the time that he was winning the war, that he was just mopping up the last pockets of resistance, it was just his natural thing to say, yes, but we need more troops. Just keep sending more, put more troops under my command. So, and then that those generals, when they retire from military service, at an earlier age than you would retire than the general retirement age, they're going to go and get jobs with BAE Systems and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Raycom and
sit on the board,
where they will carry on doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Persuading the government they need to spend more money on our stuff.
That's it.
Yeah, it's your job to do that. Yeah. So are we down to the and finally moment? The World Cup alien abduction prediction that went viral and then didn't happen. So a Brazilian spiritualist stroke psychic, Ana Tercia da Silva Gonçalves, also known as Bo Bachiana, reportedly predicted an alien abduction during Scotland's World Cup match against Brazil on 24th of June. It gained online and tabloid traction, but no alien abduction occurred that we know about anyway.
That's it. It's... I mean, I did a quick video about this on the channel. I'll put a link into it there before the game. So, and it's perhaps one of the more lighter, more amusing aspects of ufology. But it's interesting how ufology, modern ufology, links into sports and social media and tabloid culture in a way that it never did before. I'm not saying anybody took this seriously, but we talk about it now much more than we used to.
That's what I'm going to say. Yeah, it comes into more areas of discussion, as you say, sport, culture, but also in a way that just exposes it to ridicule, I think.
Yeah.
That's
a good
undermines
point. It does,
any kind of...
I can see that, and I hear that. It gives a voice to the debunkers more. Like, oh, look how silly this whole subject is. Yeah.
Look what kinds of nut jobs are saying that we're being visited by aliens. It's people like this who are saying that kind of thing. Yeah, it doesn't do you any good.
Vobahayana has followers that you and I can only dream. About 24 million followers on Instagram.
Wow, we got to up our game a bit, haven't we?
We really do. So there we go, everyone. That's our roundup of news for June 2026. Was there anything in June that we missed that you felt should have been included? Do make a comment in below and let us know if you do. Make sure you like, subscribe, all those good things so you don't miss any future roundups. And I'm not going to normally be doing this because we don't always know what we're going to be talking about next, but I can tell you that next week you want to make sure you're subscribed because we've got an exclusive interview with the author of a new book talking about UFO stories and encounters from I won't give too many spoilers here, Neil, but very reliable sources.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
Ever the skeptic.
Yeah.
Ever the skeptic.
But I promise to be nice to them.
Well, fantastic. So you don't want to miss that one anyway next week. So until then, keep watching the news and keep watching the skies. Take care.
Catch you next time. Bye-bye.